Or we could go even further. We could not call it just additional content. We could call it unincluded content or paid for content. I know people wouldn't like that, but the fact remains, it's the paid content that is not included in the game. Hello and welcome to another NihongoGamer video. You may be wondering why I've got this game up here. It's BlazBlue or BlazBlue Central Fiction. Don't really know how to pronounce it. As you may know, this game, oh dear, I just pressed a button. This game, BlazBlue Cross Tag, so basically BlazBlue plus 3 other games with other characters. It's gonna be like Marvel vs. Capcom, I guess. It's coming out for the Switch, I believe it's coming out for PS4, and I believe it's also coming out on Steam, which I was really excited about because as far as I can tell, Switch has become one of the main places, or is going to be, I think, with a lot of fighters coming out. It may not have the big ones. It doesn't have Tekken 7, it doesn't have Street Fighter 5, we got Ultra Street Fighter 2, we're getting the Street Fighter collection, so we're gonna have 12 more versions of Street Fighter to play come May. And now we're gonna be getting this, BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. So you're gonna see a lot of characters from this game. The reason we're talking about this is because recently BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle is gonna have 40 characters. So if you look at this screen here, you can see a large number of characters. I'm gonna count them, I actually don't really know how many they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 32, 33, 34. 35. So I count 35 characters in BlazBlue Central Fiction, which is currently the latest version of this game. And what they've just announced with Cross Tag Battle is there would be a good 20 characters, which I thought, okay, this is a fair roster, but one of the main draws is going to be the characters from RWBY, or RWBY, I don't know how to pronounce it. But there's only 2 characters from that game, and they've said that the third character, even though there's like 12 or 13 BlazBlue characters, there's only 2 RWBY characters, and the third character they announced for RWBY is going to be paid DLC. And not only that, have a look at this roster. Although 20 characters will be playable, only about, 12 or 13 are actually from the original BlazBlue class. The other 20 characters are going to be DLC. So if they release the game at the price that this was, and I don't know how much it was when it came out, but it was roughly probably 40 or 50 pounds or $50 or $60 or thereabouts. So about $60 is how much you'd expect to pay for a game that doesn't need DLC to be a complete package. And when I say a complete package, I mean you could enjoy the game fully. You wouldn't reach a point early on where you'd be like, this game is incomplete. But there's something special about fighting games which makes it a little bit different. If you don't have access to all the characters, then it's a little difficult to know how to play against those characters. If you don't really know how they work, if you haven't had even a short amount of time playing as those characters to find out what their movesets are, it's very difficult to understand what they call the matchups, right? So for example, knowing what this character I'm playing against, Rachel, knowing what kind of moves she's capable of will very much change the way that I play against her. Like, she might be the sort of character that I don't want to jump too much around, or it might be a character that I want to stay away from and keep my distance and that sort of thing. But I wouldn't know that if I didn't have access to the characters, and this is why I think that you really have to be careful when you add DLC to a fighting game. DLC, when you add like extra levels, like to a single player experience, so it's like you've got a full story mode, and then you add DLC to just have some extra experience, to add a bit more to the lore, to have a few more levels of gameplay just because you want to prolong your existence in it. With a fighting game, you can't really just prolong your existence in it. You actually need to have all the characters from the start. It's not that you need to, but I think it would really help competitively to have all the characters from the start. So one of the main issues, obviously, is not having all the characters means you don't really know how to fight against all the other characters. And so maybe fighting games are a special case. But I'm starting to think, if you're shipping a game with 20 characters, which I think is fair, when you think about original fighting games a long time ago, they didn't even have 20 characters total, so to start with 20 characters, I would consider that quite a full experience. Having 20 DLC characters that you have to pay for, maybe that's actually not so bad. It's not a boring game just because there's only 20 characters. I think 20 characters is quite a lot of characters to play. But I'm starting to wonder if maybe the issue isn't so much that the DLC is actually a problem and having DLC is a problem. I'm wondering if maybe we should just not call it DLC, because a lot of the times the content is already complete before the game goes on sale. And people get annoyed about that. And I remember when Street Fighter vs. Tekken was an issue, people were worried because they knew that the content was already complete. They're like, why are you making us pay extra? Even though you're making it sound like you're working extra hard to make the DLC, you've already finished making it, and so we shouldn't have to pay extra for it if it's already complete. And I think maybe if we just change the name of DLC, we just call it additional content. If you want to pay for additional content, then it puts a little more pressure on the developer to make sure that what they're selling is a full product. Because if you call it DLC and it's actually necessary content, then that's when people start to get annoyed. But if you call it additional content, then people will actually judge the game for what it is without that DLC included. Well, that escalated quickly. I think it's really pissed off a lot of the fans knowing that half the cast, 40 characters is a great number of characters. It's huge. It's clearly bigger than Central Fiction, but at what cost? Okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say each character is only $5. Then 5 times 20 is like $100. You could be potentially paying $160 just to have every character in the game, and only because you really want to learn all the matchups because you don't want to be at a disadvantage. Which seems like a real shame to me. And I'm quickly discovering that I actually can't play this game and talk at the same time. I thought I'd try something new, but this is clearly not working. Let's take Zelda for an example, right? Zelda Breath of the Wild came out, and I think everyone was fine with paying the amount of money that they paid for the single player experience. It was universally judged as a 10 out of 10 game. Everyone really, really enjoyed it. And then when they had the DLC, I think everyone was like, okay, yeah, I will pay extra money because I want to play more in that world. But I think from the start, BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, if it's going to say there's 4 different games, and one game has like 13 characters, and another game has only 2, and then you start saying, if you want more than 2 characters from the RWBY series, which is already hideously unfair, you're going to have to pay loads of money. I don't think that's going to make the fans happy. I think they're going to boycott the game, which means that you're going to have loads of lost money because you spent all that research and development money on a game that no one's going to buy now, and then you just risk companies going bust like SNK and not being able to afford making new fighting games, which would be a massive, massive shame. And I don't want that to happen because I want to see BlazBlue on the Switch. This is the sort of game that I would love to play portably. I'd love to go to a cafe and just have a few matches. I'd like to sit on the train while going on a 45-minute journey somewhere else. I'd like to be able to do a bit of training, learn a few combos. This is the sort of thing that I think would be really cool, and it's going to be a real shame if they give up on Switch just because they took this really silly gamble of having half the cost to be DLC. So if we didn't call it DLC, let's say that we didn't call it DLC, we call it additional content, then it becomes really, really clear that this game is incomplete, because that is what it is. BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle will be an incomplete product if they sell it with only 2 characters from RWBY. And that's really one of the main selling points. As far as I can tell, BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle is being aimed more at the Western audience. BlazBlue, the core series, is mostly, Japanese players, and they're hoping that this RWBY element will bring people in. But 2 characters, and they're like, yes, if you want 3 whole characters, you're gonna have to pay extra on top of a game which is, I assume, gonna be $50 to $60. Even if it's not, even if it's $30 to $40, it's still like, why didn't you put a little more effort into balancing the roster? If you're gonna call it cross tag, then it should be a cross. Crosses don't look like this, they look like this. I don't know, it kind of annoys me, and I think that we need to come up with a solution if we want to prevent more companies from going bust, because I don't want the companies to go bust, basically. I think that would be a shame. Because look at this is a fun game, but it's massively, massively in-depth. There's a lot of depth to this type of game. The Guilty Gear series is even deeper, it takes even longer to learn all the combos and all that. Alright, super combo! So I think that's really my theory on the situation, is that I think we could get past a lot of the issues if we just stop calling it downloadable content, Or we could go even further. We could not call it just additional content. We could call it unincluded content or paid for content. I know people wouldn't like that, but the fact remains that it is. It's the paid content that is not included in the game. iOS had the same issue. They were releasing hundreds of thousands of games that said free. It actually wrote in the little box free, and at some point, legally they got in trouble because the games are not free. In order to actually play them and enjoy what was being advertised in the descriptions, you did have to make some in-app purchases once you got the title. You can't just buy the title and then have to buy feature 1, feature 2, and feature 3 of a program that only has 3 features, which is what a lot of apps were doing. Which is why they changed the box that says free, they changed it to say get, because that's what you're doing, you're only getting the app. So I think maybe if even PC games and Switch games move to the point where we're not paying a huge amount of money for them, they could even switch to saying get and then have, in-app purchases. I think that's more fair, because if you don't call it DLC on an app on the iOS store, it's just like, yeah, so the initial download is free, but we know from the get-go that to have all 3 features of this 3-feature app, we're going to have to pay about $7.99 or $10.99, or sometimes up to like $50, But with a game like this, if they wrote in-app purchase, we need to change the way that we say that we're selling the games. And I think companies shouldn't be allowed to say that a game is free. A bit like the iOS store, can't say that it's free if actually to play the game fully as advertised, you do have to pay loads of money. And obviously they're not saying that this game is free, they're saying you have to pay $60 for it. But this is what was the issue with NBA 2K, whatever it was. 2K Games made that basketball game, which was like cripplingly expensive. You had to pay loads of money, otherwise it was almost impossible to actually level up your characters and make them a strong team. Which is like the main point of the game, right? To like level up your characters and have a team that's worth playing. I'm really glad that fighting games haven't done that. Like, if you actually got stronger, if you paid money and it became like pay to win in fighting games, you would never hear the end of it. That character, whatever company tries to do that, they'll go bust immediately. But NBA tried that. They're like, here, pay like $60 for the game, and then if you want to even manage to vaguely compete and play a team that's, massive, in any way competitive, you'll have to pay loads of extra money. And I'm wondering if maybe that's what the real issue is with BlazBlue, because people see that half the cast, first of all, it's unfair that RWBY doesn't get as many characters as BlazBlue. Yes, maybe there just are fewer characters in general, just because BlazBlue has been building characters for years now. What was that? Oh my goodness. But in addition to that, I feel like the issue really is that you can't be... It's kind of difficult to be competitive in this game if you don't know how the other characters fight, because you just haven't had a chance to use them, because they're not even included in the game. Now, something that's been really interesting is how Street Fighter V actually included Sakura in the game for free for 1 week. What's interesting is how they included Sakura free for a week, so at least people have a 1 week session to test out the character, learn how they play, even if they don't intend to play as that character. And I think that would encourage more people to download characters that they've never used before. I think a lot of people are probably looking at characters like Ed, Zeku, Menat, and going like, what? I don't even know if I want to play those characters, and so just not spending any money on them at all. And then getting knocked out by them in matches online because they don't know how those characters work, just because they haven't had a chance to really play them hands-on. So I feel like another way that we could solve the downloadable content issue, for fighting games at least, is to have these trial periods and let people test stuff out. Maybe if because now we all have PSN accounts and Steam accounts, you could actually limit it per account. You could say like, once the account has had a one week chance to play the game, then that account can be locked out from having another week of free content. So yeah, sorry, that was just a new thing that I wanted to try. Having a cohesive discussion while trying to play a game at the same time. And I've discovered that it's much, much more difficult than I thought it was going to be. BlazBlue Cross Tag making half of the roster DLC, clearly that is going to be an issue. I think it's going to massively hurt sales if Arc System Works doesn't do something about it, like, say that actually they're going to release more of the characters, they're going to make them much more inexpensive, or the bundles are going to make it really cheap, or the game itself is going to be really cheap, but you can also buy the DLC at a lower price, and altogether the game will only be $60. I think that would be a much better strategy just for Arc System Works, because I don't want them to give up on the Switch. I want them to continue to support the Switch with fighting games. Capcom, SNK, and Arc System Works, which I would consider some of, like, you know, the big three, and Bandai Namco. So 3 out of 4 big makers are already supporting. And actually, when you think about it, didn't Namco make Pokken? So in a way, all 4 of them have got fighting games coming to the Switch or already on the Switch. I think it's good, but if we don't change the way we call DLC additional content, or in-app purchases, or necessary content, or half the game, just call it what it is. Say that the game is only half complete without the content. And then I think people are going to be much more okay with spending money, because I think, as you've seen, when content is actually a surplus to the game, and not necessary to compete properly and play the game properly from the start, people don't mind paying it. People want DLC. We are excited when we see DLC come out. I think we've proven that DLC as a theory is not a problem. The problem is just what we call it. The problem is that we are calling half-completed games full games without actually having all the content that should be there for that price. We don't care about paying for DLC. We will pay for it, but call it what it is. Call it an incomplete game. Price it as an incomplete game. Make it $25 and make it $50 total if you buy all the DLC. And I will guarantee, I mean, I'm not really going to bet on it, but I am pretty sure that people will buy it way more than if you price it full price and you have DLC. Especially in a game where it's difficult to compete if you don't know how the other characters play. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, share links and all that good stuff, and I will see you next time.